What is up? Welcome to episode 70 of Etsy Jam. Is your shop a side hustle or a full-time focus? When will you cross the threshold into your newly built handmade or vintage business? This week we talk with Paula from CLNandDRTY about when that time came for her, the decisions she's made which helped her set herself up for success, one of the top simple things she does to nourish a healthy community, and some tricks she's found to help overcome the challenges she's faced with time and money. Sit back and crank up the volume for another great Etsy Jam. What is up? Welcome to Etsy Jam, the podcast where we have fun conversations about serious topics. I am Gordon from Marmalead.
I am Richie from Marmalead. And if you're not familiar with Marmalead, but you have an Etsy shop you are serious about, you should check out Marmalead. Marmalead is the best Etsy SEO and market research tool for serious sellers. And in other words, it's going to help you find the perfect keywords for your products to get seen by the most shoppers on Etsy. So you can go check that out at marmalead.com, which is marmalead.com.
Nice. And we have a very special guest with us this week. We have Paula here from CLNandDRTY, and that's actually spelled out. I'm going to spell it out for people in case they want to check out your shop, Paula. It is CLNandDRTY, and they can find you on Etsy. And so, first of all, thanks for taking the time to be with us today. This is going to be an awesome chat.
My goodness, guys, thank you so much for having me. What an absolute pleasure. I've been listening to you guys for a little over a year now, and I've been kind of thinking every time I listen, I'm like, gosh, I would really like to be on there. So I reached out to you, and I'm so excited.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to hear what we get to.
Awesome. Yeah. And actually, before we get into it too much, do you want to give us a little bit of background about how you got started on Etsy? It sounded like you kind of, in college, were dabbling around a little bit on Etsy, like, oh, this would be a cool place to make some side money, and then took a bit of a break from it, and then came back to it in 2016 with your CLNandDRTY shop. So if you want to kind of take us through that journey and what that looked like, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Thank you so much. So I knew about Etsy just pretty much from when it started. It was probably about 5-6 years ago, maybe even 7 years ago. And I just knew that you could buy some handmade stuff on that. It was really right in the beginning. There wasn't too much method to the madness. I don't think people saw themselves as legitimate, quote, business owners who were on there. It was just people trying to sell a craft here or there and people trying to buy a craft here or there. So I decided I was in grad school. I was in grad school for communications management, and I was a broke grad student and I needed some money. So I went on Etsy, and this is not a business strategy that I would suggest. I saw what people were selling the most of. So I decided that if people were selling a lot of jewelry, I was also going to sell jewelry, which in reality probably isn't a great way to figure out what your niche is going to be because it was even a saturated market back then. So I decided that I was going to start selling some jewelry on there. I don't even wear that much jewelry, to be honest. No. And I went to my local craft shop. I set myself a budget of, say, $100. I bought up a bunch of craft supplies. I made a bunch of jewelry. I made a few bucks here and there. I don't know if I even was like balancing my books. I don't know if I was making a profit. So
now, had you made jewelry before, or was that your first time just jumping into it, both feet?
No, it was just, I saw that people were selling it, so I decided to sell it. It was pretty standard, like beads on a string. Yeah. I have like kind of a bohemian style, so it was kind of bohemian. And I went to craft shows, and I can't tell you how many like setups I had at craft shows where I didn't even make the table fee. And I think that's, you guys are entrepreneurs, and a lot of the people that are listening as entrepreneurs, I think kind of one of the mindsets that you have to have as an entrepreneur to start is to just kind of have this, it'll work out one way or the other craziness. And then eventually it doesn't, and you have to kind of know when to quit. But right in the beginning, you just have to think like, well, I'm going to give it my best shot. And I made a few bucks here and there. And then I went into the real world, quote unquote, like I'm doing air quotes right now, real world. And I went into a marketing job, and it was fine. It was okay. Mm-hmm. And then I I don't think I explained this too much in my summary, but then I also had another Etsy shop where I started selling artwork. So I've been a lifelong artist, and I went into it with a little more strategy, right? It was something that people knew me for. Whenever someone would come into my home, they would say, wow, that's a beautiful painting. Where can I buy that? Rather than like, I was listening at this point. I at least had the skill of listening to my audience and figuring out like, this is what they were asking for. So that I had to go part-time with that job due to some personal stuff. And I started selling the art quite a bit on Etsy, and I was actually making a decent profit, but the photography, photographing art is a whole nother issue. I really give a shout out to any people who are selling on Etsy who are doing like large format work or, any art. It's not easy at all. So I was selling that at first to people that I knew, and then they were buying it for their friends, and then their friends started buying it, and then their friends' friends started buying it. And I actually was doing fairly decent. It wasn't going bad. But then I kind of I don't know, there's so much. I think being an entrepreneur is much more socially accepted now, but it was maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, and there was still that pressure to like, I felt it, to have that quote real job. So I petered off with that, and I got that real job. But again, I got drawn into the handmade world. So I ended up pregnant with my second daughter, and I had been for a while. So as you guys can tell, I've kind of always been crafty, always trying to figure out how to make like a little extra buck on the side. And I had been for a while making some homemade sunscreen. So I had 2 young daughters at the time, and I had sprayed on like a conventional, like store-bought sunscreen, and my one daughter was teething. So she latched onto my shoulder and immediately ate that sunscreen.
Yeah.
And I just, like Richie, you got little kids, right? Like,
oh yeah, 2 of them.
I was just like, this, and I'm not like a health freak. I'm not a health freak. And my community knows this. My customers know this. But you have to choose your battles. And that was a battle that I was really willing to choose. I wasn't okay with her eating that. So I went online. I found some recipes for how to make like a zinc oxide based sunscreen. And I posted on Facebook. Like, you had to buy it in bulk. Like, you had to buy 16 ounces of zinc oxide and 5 pounds of shea butter. And so I made all these batches of the sunscreen, and it worked really well. So I posted on Facebook, and just to my friends, I said, does anyone want to buy one of these at cost? And I sold through them.
Nice.
So the next season, people were saying, are you going to make those sunscreens again? They were awesome. I really love them for my family. Yeah. So I made another batch. And then I sold them for a little bit more.
Yeah.
And they sold out. And then the third year was the year when I was pregnant with my second daughter. And I had to leave my job again for health reasons related to pregnancy. And I cannot sit idle. It's just not within my personality. So this was May of 2016, and people were asking for the sunscreen again. And now it had spread to maybe 50 people that I knew and their friends asking for this sunscreen. And they were asking, how can they buy it online? And I was saying, oh, you can do it through PayPal, but how am I going to ship it? And I just thought, I know how to use Etsy. I know, I thought at the time that I knew how to use Etsy. Now I'm really learning that there's a lot more to it, thanks to you guys as well. I have my background in communications management. I have my background in branding. And I decided, if I'm going to sell this, I might as well set the foundation if this becomes a business. So I sat down and I thought, what is the company name going to be? And this was all theoretical, but I wanted to at least have the foundation set. So what's my Etsy shop going to be? Clean and dirty. I thought about it. I was like, something edgy, but something also kind of natural. There's actually a meditation center in New York City called Mindful. It's MNDFL. And I was listening to a podcast about them, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, so I kind of took that idea. It's edgy, it's clean. I wanted to do something that was natural, but not like crunchy, boring, like on the
Yeah.
farm. Not that farms are boring, but like I want it to be edgy and a little bit urban and a little bit, like fun, that like cool, new, like young, hip mom. That was like my target market. So I set the foundation. I made a logo. I decided who my target market was going to be. My target market is primarily like women age 25 to 35 who are a little bit of higher affluence. They have a little bit more extra spending money. So I knew that I wanted to create something that was, a little more luxurious, super effective, natural, and that they were really getting a great bang for their buck. So it started in May of 2016. Oddly enough, I don't sell sunscreen anymore.
I was gonna ask
What?
that.
What happened?
It's a medical product.
Oh.
No way.
Yeah. So I learned a lot about the Food and Drug Administration. There are sellers who sell it on Etsy. It's not something, I don't want to mess with the FDA.
Yeah.
It's not something, we decided going into it. I sat down with my husband. I said, if this is going to be a business, if this is something where we're going to go, we just have to cover our bases. It's not the same as selling a blanket or, a pair of earrings or something. It's something that people are putting on their skin.
Yeah.
So I take a lot of pride in that. I really research my ingredients. I use the highest quality ingredients, and I would never sell anything that would put anybody at risk. I just can't risk somebody getting a sunburn. But because I had those 50 people that were really interested in buying my sunscreen, I then reached out to them and I said, guys, like, what are the next things that you want to see? What are those natural products that you're not seeing in the market at the level of quality that you want to see them? And they started telling me, they said, I wanted to see deodorants. I want to see really phenomenal moisturizers. Like, my cuticles are peeling. I want a cuticle oil. And then people started asking for facial skincare. And that's when it really, really took off.
Okay. And so you've mentioned a couple times in here, in the backstory of it, the constant communication you have with your customer base and your community. And I assume that kind of came from growing things up small on Facebook with, I've got this extra stuff I want to get rid of. Will anyone buy it at cost? And kind of building, that relationship there is with friends and friends of friends. But, as you've grown from that, how do you still engage your community? How do you find your community if they're not the ones that are already on Facebook? What sorts of things do you do to kind of keep in touch with them?
I love that you're saying community and not customers, because that's really how I see it.
Yeah.
That's completely how I see it. So I've told people within my community, I said, I don't care if you never buy one product from me. I still value your opinion, and I still value you in the growth of my business. It's not about, earning that buck from them. So I do have a pretty vibrant community on my Facebook page. Instagram, I have a lot of conversation with people through Instagram, and a lot of just in-person conversation as well. I think it's about just character. We're in a time right now with the advent of the internet, not the advent of the internet, but the growth of the internet, where everybody has a business, right? And everybody wants to tell you about their business. But often people don't want to hear your opinion about their business. So the way I try is through my social media and even through my conversation with people in person. I'm sure you guys have heard this from a lot of other people, like Jenna Kutcher talks about it a lot. She has an amazing podcast, but it's serve, 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 sell, serve, 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 sell. And that's really how I communicate with the community is I tell them about what I've learned about natural skincare. I ask them what they might be interested in terms of scents. I ask them, and this could be through Instagram polls, like within stories. This could be through Facebook polls. It could just be through posting questions. I post a lot of videos on Facebook Live. I try and do a weekly Facebook Live video where I communicate with my customers or my community. And it's not, and often it's just like, hey guys, how are you doing? Like, what do you want to see coming up? Rather than, let me tell you about my amazing products and its 5 benefits. And this is the sale that I'm having.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people hear that every single day. That's oversaturated. People want a human connection. And when you offer them that human connection, when they're ready to buy, then they will know to come to you.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And how does that Facebook Live go? Do you like doing that? Do you have a lot of people that jump in on that and ask questions?
I do. So I do it on Facebook Live and Instagram Live at the same time. I'll go on Facebook Live on my laptop and I'll go on Instagram Live on my phone.
Okay.
And I'll switch it up. Like I'll do it. What's important too is as you guys know, people know where to find you week to week. They know that they can expect to see your podcast come up every single week on their feed. So it's the same. Like I'll say, I'm going live on Facebook and I'll post I'll post a video on Thursday, Friday, and then I say I'm going live on Sunday, like teasers for it. And the same with Instagram Live. I'll say Thursday, Friday, I'll post like little teasers, and then Sunday I'm going live. So people know what to expect. And I'll do something like my evening skincare routine. Like I'll show them taking off, like I'll show them me using my product, but I'm not like selling the product. I'm just like, this is what I do because those are the questions that I get. So what I try and do with those and any live videos that I do, and I'll pop in through the week and do them. But if I'm getting a question a lot, like if I'm seeing the same question come into my inbox over and over again, then I'll address it through a live video. Mm-hmm. You know, you see a lot on the Etsy forums, people will saying, oh, I'm getting the same question over and over again. One great solution for that is to have templated answers, but why not go the extra mile and do like a live video? People love seeing your face.
Yeah. I would imagine you get a lot of feedback when you do those too, of people who are like, oh, I had that same question, but I just never asked, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's funny too, when we were kind of pre-chatting before the show, and we we're talking about things to cover. You mentioned that you even reached out to your community to ask for feedback about things that they would like to hear you cover in the podcast, which I was like, that's awesome. Because we definitely wanted to cover the whole community aspect and, you know, how much weight you put on it as a seller, that like, this is one of my core, you know, reasons for success is this close relationship with my community, which is awesome. But to hear that you actually reached out to them and were like, okay, guys, what do you want to hear about in this when I get on there? Get some feedback about that too.
Think of it this way. I got an email saying that I'm going to chat with you guys on Monday. I could have theoretically just told my husband and said, I'm going to chat with these guys from this podcast. And then I could have waited until it went live. And then I could have seen if anybody heard of it, like heard it on your end. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, I just feel like there's something infectious about enthusiasm and about positivity. And so I went on one of my Etsy groups. Can I give them a shout out?
Absolutely. Go for it.
So it's a Facebook group and it's called Thriving on Etsy and Beyond. And they're just wonderful. There's so many great people on there. And I said, guys, you won't believe it. I'm going on the Marmalead podcast. I'm going on Etsy Jam. Since I'm going to be on there, is there anything you guys want me to answer? Are there any like outstanding questions? Are there any topics that have been on your mind? So what does it do? It makes them feel engaged. It encourages them to listen to your podcast now, because now they're going to want to hear their questions answered. Mm-hmm. And now they're intertwined with you. They're intertwined with me. Now they're part of your community as well. So like, why would you keep excitement and awesome news to yourself when, again, so I, for one moment, did not sell any of my products within that conversation. I'm serving. But now I have a deeper relationship with all of those people. And say they're thinking about like buying a Christmas present or buying a Valentine's Day present. They're like, oh yeah, Paula, she's got that natural skincare company. I chatted with her online and she was on that podcast. Let me check out her store. It's not like, you guys are I value your product so much, and SEO is amazing, and I wouldn't be able to do my business without it because I get so much traffic from it. But you know, it's like the head and the heart, right? So like you guys are the head, and then you got to get the heart too. And I think that's a good way to like balance your business.
So one of the other things you brought up in your write-up too was kind of this, you know, this moment where you're on maternity leave and you're coming up to, all right, what am I going to do here? Am I going to go back to my job where I work full time, or am I going to try to make this Etsy thing work full time and kind of do my own thing? And you mentioned a handful of things that you did in your write up, and you actually talked about them a little bit too in your background that you just gave us here on the Jam too. But can you kind of put yourself back in that moment and what that was like and the things that you decided to focus on, and kind of take your business seriously as a business like you might not have done prior to that?
So there was kind of two moments, and I'll consolidate them. So I started Clean and Dirty. I opened the shop in May of 2016. And again, I was just kind of buying materials and selling product, I wasn't tracking my expenses. I wasn't tracking what my profits were. I wasn't paying myself. I mean, I was paying myself, like there was money coming in, but then I didn't know how much of that I was spending to go back into the business.
Sure.
And I had 6 months of maternity leave with my company, and I was 5 months into it. And I was at a turning point with Clean and Dirty, and I said, okay, do I do this? Do I continue just doing it part-time, like making a little bit of money here and there, supplementing my full-time income, and go back to my full-time job, which was pretty demanding. It was retail management. I loved the company that I worked for, but they were late nights and early mornings and time away from my family. Or do I try and make this business a true business? And the thing that caught me in that thought, I remember I was sitting in my dining room, and I was, I had all my product laid out in front of me, and I thought, true business, like what is a true business? I actually Googled, I'm like, what makes a business? And I started looking at this, and I said, okay, I'm selling a product and I'm making a profit. Oh my goodness, I have a business. I go, oh my goodness, I'm a business owner. And I emailed a friend who was an accountant, and I said, do I have a business? And she goes, yeah, you run a business. I think there might be people listening at this moment who are just like, oh, I thought I was just selling things. Guys, if you're selling something, you have a business. Get yourself an accountant, because there's a benefit to having an accountant. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, okay, well, I have this business. And it felt like at that moment, it felt like having another child. It was this responsibility. And I said, okay. I looked at my sales, and then I realized at that point, I never went into debt for Clean and Dirty, but I wasn't making any profit. I kind of had a profit and loss sheet, and I was kind of at like $10 in profit for the entire business. I mean, I was investing in making inventory at that point, but I was like, I'm not paying myself. I stepped outside, and I was actually going to put product on my front steps for my mail carrier to take away. And I thought, I am never going to make money doing this. I've been at this for 5.5 months, and I've made $10. I have a room full of product. I don't know how to run a business. What have I got myself into? And I remember stepping over the threshold, like going outside and thinking, I am never going to be profitable. I thought the word rich, but that's a whole nother like mindset conversation. I thought, I'm never going to get rich doing this. I'm never going to, make a living. Let's say make a living. And then I stopped, and I thought, you know what? I'm smart. I have a degree. I've run stores. I've run all kinds of businesses. Why can't I run my own business? And I just kind of had this aha moment of, if I have a business, because someone told me now that I have a business, I'm going to treat it like a business. So what I did is I found accounting software. I got myself some QuickBooks. I started looking at inventory management. I started listening to every single business podcast I could find. I started doing webinars. I started carving out, and this is one of the questions that I got through my community, is how do you balance creating product and running your business? I started carving out. So I made a commitment that 2 hours out of my day would be for business management. So whether looking at my numbers, looking at accounting, setting goals. So I set financial goals for my business. I want to make X amount in each month. I want to grow X amount each month. I started looking at my messaging. We had already talked about like social media and how we communicate with our people. I started looking at how often I want to communicate with them, what kind of messages I want to send them. So I started looking at it less flying by the seat of my pants And I know a lot of sellers are doing that. They're, they're just trying to, they make a product, they slap it on there, they hope it sells. Less of that and more of strategy. That was that moment. And since then, I mean, it's been progress. It's not every day. I don't have like a full strategy every day, but it's been progress and it's been working. Yeah.
So let me ask, are you like naturally inclined to do that kind of thing? Was that kind of a natural progression for you? Was it something you just kind of, because of the mindset and you knew you needed to do it, you kind of made yourself do it? And then how do you feel about it now versus you did then? I'm just trying to kind of get in the head of somebody who was like you, never did it before, and then is hearing, about that. Like, what is that 2 hours going to feel like for them? How's it going to be later on once they get used to it?
One way is kind of to reverse engineer it. So goal setting. So I know we're coming into 2018 and a lot of people are looking at, people set their resolutions, they set their personal goals. Say, for instance, you set a business goal. So my background when I was managing retail, and it was high-end retail, was actually in goal setting for the company. So I do have a background in that, which definitely benefited me. But one of the things the company did is they set, for each of the employees, we had to set financial goals, and we had to set health goals and personal goals. So I realized that for a balanced business, I have to set financial goals, but I kind of also have to set those health goals for the business. So, the health goals can be considered communication goals, like how do you market? So if you are running a handmade business, and Etsy has an amazing stats system where you can say, what did I make in December of 2016? And then you look at that compared to what you made in December of 2017. How much did you grow? So then you're looking at December of 2018. So you're saying, like, my goal personally is for my business, my profit to grow 100% year over year at this point. So we're looking to double our income year over year.
That's awesome.
Thank you. And we're going to do it. Like, we're definitely doing it this year. So we're going to blow it out of the park next year. So you reverse engineer it. You say, that's how much we want to grow our profits. But if I keep going at the same rate I am, I'm not going to be able to grow it that way. Like, other things have to grow within the business in order to grow those profits. So what do I need? If I want my profits to grow by 100%, what else in my business has to grow by 100%? I need to double my listings, because if you double your listings, you could theoretically make double the sales. But if I double my sales, how am I going to be able to fill all of them? So then you can add to your goals that you're going to hire someone to help you 3 days a week. So it's kind of that like trickle down reverse engineering effect. I love a good planner. I love a good giant calendar on my walls, highlighting all of the upcoming holidays and saying what kind of product launches we're doing for those. My goal for the year is not to fly by the seat of my pants. We've been doing that better year by year. So saying like, okay, we're going to have Valentine's Day coming up. We're going to release Valentine's Day scents 1 month before Valentine's Day, which means 1 month before that, we have to start doing teasers for it, which means 1 month before that, we have to start developing the product. So just kind of going backwards and taking, like I said, the 2 hours per day. I was listening today to a podcast with Seth Godin, and he was saying so many people fail in business when they're just trying to work in the emergency mode. They're trying to do the thing that needs the most attention at the moment. So for an Etsy seller, often that's filling orders, right? Like, you've got orders coming in, you just got to fill them. You got orders coming in, you got to fill them. Yeah, that needs to be done. But he said that the most important part is to give, I'm going to mess up how he said it. He said, we spend a lot of time paying attention to the things which are urgent, but we need to spend a set amount of time paying attention to the things that are going to bring us the most change within our business. So you need to pay attention to the things that are urgent, yes, but then you also need to commit to the things that will bring change to your business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
It does. It does. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I at one point used kind of this quadrant. And it was on one axis was urgent and the other one was important. So you had like things that were urgent and important, and those things were actually like things that mattered, like you've got like a day to pay your electric bill before they turn it off. Like, that's urgent and important. you know?
Yeah.
But then there's things that are urgent but not important, you know?
Yeah.
Like all these emails you get, they're just kind of like, I don't know, like an email's in there, but like you want to read it, but it's not really important to read it. It feels urgent. Maybe there's a time on it. I don't know. Or like a TV show, right? Like that, it might be urgent. Like if I don't watch it in the next hour and it's on regular TV, you're going to miss it. But is it important? No, it's not important.
Right.
So urgent, not important is like the never going to get done category. And that's fine.
I love it. Mm-hmm.
There's things that are important that aren't urgent, and those things can just go on like a to-do list.
Yeah, and some of those things, the important, not urgents, are the things that could make or break your business too. Like those are the things that, like me answering my customer emails, it doesn't matter if I do it right. I mean, arguable, right? It doesn't matter if I do it right now or if I do it in an hour. But there are some things, like if there was one incident, so this email, right? Urgent and important. Are you guys familiar with Nylon Magazine?
No, can't say.
Oh man, two guys, people. So they're kind of, they are a publication, they're a magazine, and they're kind of like the millennial market. So probably like 20 to 30 female, really edgy, hip female. And they messaged me on Etsy and said, we need your product by tomorrow morning in our New York offices because we want to feature it in our August issue. Urgent and important. First of all, I thought it was a scam. I was like, this can't be real. At the same time, I was like, well, what do I have to lose? Like overnight shipping and the price of one of my products. It was featured in their magazine, which was awesome and led to quite a bit of sales. But there are those things that are important but not urgent that can make a huge difference. Long-term planning for your business, strategy, messaging, branding, relationship building with wholesalers, stuff like that. Not very urgent, but profoundly important.
And it's amazing how many things end up in that urgent but not important type thing. Like that's most the lights and alarms that are going off on your phone, and like every time you open up Facebook, things like that. Like everything's vying for your attention. But a lot of those things, if you don't do them, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Do you guys, I don't imagine you do because it's more of like a female-based podcast, the Gold Digger podcast with Jenna Kutcher.
I've heard of it, but I haven't listened to it.
Yeah, she's been like a massive success in the like the small business entrepreneur market. But she talks about how one day a week she actually puts her phone on airplane mode and, schedules, I do batch schedule for scheduling for my Instagram and my Facebook. So she puts her phone on airplane mode for 8 hours, batch schedules all of her social media, batch schedules all of her Instagram. I use Later, which I really like. Batch schedules all of her Facebook, doesn't answer any emails, doesn't answer any messages, doesn't do any Instagram stories, does strategy planning for the rest of the week. Batch schedules her email marketing. Guys, if you're not doing email marketing, I cannot express how important it is. Just start your list today. And that is what I try and do too. So sometimes I'll do it in those 2 hours. Sometimes I will go on airplane mode for a day or go to a cafe. Anybody who works from home, you know how easy it is to just get like stuck in your sweatpants at home for 4 days. Just go to a cafe, turn everything off, get everything on airplane mode, and just start batch scheduling everything like for the next 7 days. That's been really helpful too.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that.
And that helps you get a cohesive story as to what you're looking for, right? Like as to what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Like coming into the holidays, instead of every day being like, I need to tell them that I only have 3 days left before my deadline. I could set up messaging for the 2 weeks coming up to my deadline saying, you guys have 2 weeks, you guys have 10 days, you guys, and making that all line up with my social media, with my Instagram, with my Facebook, with my email, making sure all of that messaging lined up so it's more effective.
That makes sense. That's a good tip there too. That way you're not, so in the whole day to day, like what you started, if you have 7 days of messaging, what you start on the first day, if you're not really feeling that same train of thought on that 7th day, your messaging is going to be kind of like very like, what happened there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if you're not in the mood for it. I mean, some days you're in the mood for writing those things out, and other days you're like, and I'm not in the mood to write.
Well, and that's a great point. People think that because, personally, when you go on Facebook, on your own personal page, you write what you're in the mood to say, right? You're like, today I had the best hamburger ever, blah, blah, blah. But when you're running a business, that's not how it works. Like, there has to be strategy behind your messaging. So you can't just go around writing about the best hamburger that you had on your business page or on your business Instagram. There has to be a little bit more strategy, like behind the voice of your brand. Like, you may not be in the mood to write it that day, but it's got to go out because that's your marketing.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You know?
you kind of stumbled into the next thing I wanted to talk with you about. When you were talking about, putting your phone into airplane mode, and talking about carving out 2 hours a day to work on just business stuff. And the next thing I'd like to chat with you about is struggles. This is always a fun one, I think. And the ones that you had listed in the write-up that you sent over to us were time and money. So I think these are big ones. These are pretty global struggles for people. And you already kind of touched on a bunch of strategies that you use to, I think, help with, time management, which is tough, especially when you're doing your own thing. But any other tips or techniques that you've come across that you found have worked well for you for either one of those?
Yeah. So time management, I think, again, I said that I posed this question to the Facebook group, the Thriving on Etsy and Beyond Facebook group. And one of the people said, she actually asked about time management. And she said, and excuse me, I'm so sorry if I'm misquoting her, but she said something along the lines of, well, since we run our own business, we have to be available 24/7. Our customers expect it. And how do you stay sane while being available 24/7? And I responded to her, I don't agree with that. So I'm not going to answer that question the way you want me to answer it. Because I'm not available to my customers 24/7, and I'm not available to my community 24/7. I have hours where I have 2 small children where they are out of the home, and those are the hours within which I work. The other hours, if you catch me when I've got the phone in my hands, I might be able to answer you. But if not, it's going to wait until the next morning. I've never gotten pushback on that from my customers or my community. I think people perceive that they will get pushback on it. That if you don't answer somebody's conversation or direct message within 5 minutes, they will get upset with you, or you may lose a sale. May you lose a sale? It's possible, but you kind of have to keep your sanity. So my answer for time management is boundaries. I really need to create distinct boundaries within my home. So I have a separate room that I do all of my business in. I have an office. At the end of the day, those doors close. And I really try not to go back in there. And the same with time boundaries. If you're messaging me at a time where I am not within my, my quote office hours, I may not respond to you, and that's completely fine. I will give you my full and undivided attention when I am back in my work hours. And that's what it has to be. I try not to be on my phone between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. That's a commitment that I've made to my family as well, or I'm trying to keep to my family as the phone goes away at 8 p.m. and it doesn't come back until 8 a.m. I do, in terms of adding more time to your day, because you can only have so much time in my day. Like, for instance, we did a huge Black Friday sale, and I will never complain about making sales. It is actually my biggest peeve when I hear people say, I'm making so many sales. People just keep buying and buying and buying from me and giving me their money. And what am I going to do? I can't fill these orders. Wow, that really stinks. Your life. Sorry that you got yourself into that. But I was almost there on Black Friday. What would a business owner do? A business owner would hire someone seasonally. So that's what I did. I put the feelers out on my personal social media and on my business as well, because I included the people around me. I said, does anyone want to come package product for me? I can either pay you or I can pay it in product. You don't know how many people wanted to be paid in product. I had the requests flying in. So I had people in my house helping me package products. You have to ask for help. People think that that term solopreneur, entrepreneur, solopreneur, that you're solo. You're not. You have to ask for help sometimes. In terms of money, I've tried to I've never gone into debt for the business. It's been a commitment that I've made to my family and made to myself that, we try and be a debt-free family, and I refuse to be a business in debt. There is I'm not going to remember her name, and I'm so sorry, but if you Google Turbo Etsy seller spreadsheet, there's a gal on Etsy who actually sells them. So I'm sure if you went into Etsy and searched Etsy seller spreadsheet, it's called the Turbo Etsy seller spreadsheet. It's incredible. It is the most beautiful Excel and number spreadsheet in the world. And you can import your sales, and it tells you, how much your sales are for the month. It's month by month, and your materials and your marketing, and you can input all of that. And then I added extra lines into it, saying what my goals are for how much I want to pay myself and how much I can invest back into the business. In terms of finances, people, you need to track it. You need to track what you're putting into your business, and you need to treat it like a business. So, even if you're only doing it one day a week, even if it's a small side hustle, and even if you're doing it just to sell a little here and there, I really think it's important to know how much you're making. What are your profit margins on your product? I know you guys talk a lot about product cost. I've learned a lot from you on how to price my product. There's been a lot of great resources from you guys. And if you want to know how much to price your product, you need to know how much you're making on it. Mm-hmm. So that's been really helpful, that spreadsheet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of Black Friday and holiday orders, so when do you stop taking holiday orders in your shop?
I stopped December 15th.
December 15th. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I was wondering, though, because it's one of Etsy's goals. Their CEO, Josh, was talking about in the one video about how while a bunch of other retail establishments are ramping up as it gets closer and closer to the holiday, whatever one it is, that's when he's talking about Christmas. But as it gets closer to the holiday, they're ramping up. But Etsy's really winding down at that point. So I was just kind of curious about, where your take was as far as, when you stop doing the holiday orders. So, but I know everyone has different reasons for it. Some people are like, hey, holidays are for my family and my sanity, and I'm okay with wrapping it up. And others are like, I'm afraid that the product's not going to get there on time, and I'm angry customers. So that's where the question came from.
I think it's about commitment to quality. So the downfall of having a primarily e-commerce business is you have to account for shipping times, right? And you have to account for packaging and even production times. Would I like to be able to sell to people and make a little extra money and put a little extra money in my pocket until, say, the 23rd of December? Absolutely. I would love that. I don't want to have to put a hard stop on December 15th, but I'm also committed to the best quality products to my customers and getting it to them on time. So I don't want to ever make a promise that I can't keep. So if I don't put a date on when they can buy through, and I just say, you know what, let's just hedge our bets and I'll try and get it to you, and I don't, and they don't have a Christmas present for their mom, guess who they're not buying from next year? Yeah. So it's going back again to that customer relationship. I'm never going to lie to my customers. I'm always going to be honest with them. And I always want to have that relationship with them first. I've also been very clear on my messaging on when that cutoff date is. Every day on my Instagram, there's been a countdown. Every day on my Facebook, there's been a countdown. It's in my shop announcement. It's in my thank you message. So would I like to make the extra money? Absolutely. But what's more important is making sure that I serve my customer well.
I like that you're putting that in your messaging too. So for the people in your community, they know. They're not, so the people are already aware of you and aware of your product. They're like, okay, look, there's a deadline, and being reminded a bunch of times. So if they miss it and they've seen the message, it's one of those things like, it's my fault. I did that.
Yeah. And I can't express, I hear a lot of people saying well, I sent out an email 2 weeks ago saying what the deadline is, right? How many, like, think of, I like these, like, I really like this one style of jeans from American Eagle. So I do pay attention to their email list. I get an email from them every single day telling me what their sales are, when the style's in, when it's out, blah, blah, blah. Like you hear a lot of people saying, oh, I'm worried about, communicating too much with my customer. I don't think you can if you're using that serve, sell model. So, you can't tell them enough, and especially with an important communication such as when, holiday shipping deadlines are, or what your, for other people, like what your policies are, you really can't communicate them enough because the human brain will just tune it out if they don't want to hear it. So yeah, I'd rather over communicate than, not have my message sent to them.
Yeah, it's amazing how much the brain will tune out.
It is. It's phenomenal. and how it will really tune into the messages it wants to hear. So be that message that your customers want to hear.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's like the things you notice, like you'll notice the things that have been brought up recently. Like if someone starts talking about like a white Ford Explorer, you're going to go out, drive around, and you're going to see like a ton of them and be like, where the heck did these come from? Oh, they've always been there. It's just no one was talking about them before. And now you did, you see them everywhere. That's,
you know what, that's called the white Jeep phenomenon. It's a thing.
Oh, I've heard that. Okay, yes.
If you're looking to buy a white Jeep, you will see white Jeeps everywhere. So, but yeah.
It's kind of like that with messaging. Like if you're worried about, messaging, like you were going to have some email list that you've been on in your mind that annoyed you. And like, you don't want to be like that one. That's the one that comes up. But you don't notice like how many that you actually enjoy. Like you're like, well, American Eagle messages me every day. And I like those jeans and I want to know when they're around.
Yeah. You know what? That's a great point too. A lot of people will say, how do you figure out the messaging? How do you figure out how to speak to your customers? How do you figure out what you want your images to look like? How do you figure out, anything about your business? Find a business who's doing it awesome and do it better than them, or do it similar. You know what I mean? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can't copy what other people are doing. That's rude and infringement and awful. But you need to do your research, see what other people are doing. Like sign up for those other Etsy shops that you love. Sign up for their email lists. Follow them on Instagram. Follow them on all their social media. What are they doing that is so awesome? And do it in a way that fits your community. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you do marketing.
No. I mean, it seems like most of, whether it's small or large, like most of the emails I get that are email marketing and a lot of the social media branding, it's all very similar. It's all very, very similar. They follow the same patterns. And I guess a lot of it is actually managed by the same people.
Yeah.
A lot of it's not even managed internally. So a lot of the big brands, they have it managed by somebody else. And that person who's doing it is doing it for 10 other brands. So it's not super unique to them.
No. And I mean, that goes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, how you go on Facebook and write for your personal page, what you're personally thinking. But when you're doing it for your company, you need to think of it as a company. What is the messaging? What is the messaging? Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, if you were a big company and you're doing a TV commercial or something, you would look at advertising agencies and you'd be like, okay, what does your portfolio look like? What do you have?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we love that commercial for MasterCard, or, oh, we love those Budweiser frogs, give us something like that.
Yeah. And you'd say, you know what? I saw our competitors do something like this last year and it worked really well for them. How can we do something, they did something risky. I want to do something risky. Let's do something along those lines to try and get a reaction from our customers. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with learning from what other people are doing. Your company doesn't have to exist in a bubble.
Don't exist in a bubble.
Don't exist in a bubble. It's lonely and cold, and plus I can't. There's an awesome group on Facebook called the Rising Tide Society. Are you guys familiar with them?
Not familiar
come on! I'm throwing all the resources at you. Show notes. So the Rising Tide Society, I mean, it's like tens of thousands of people, and it's a lot of like photographers. It's a group for entrepreneurs, but their motto is community over competition. It's all about, if you're a photographer, connect with other photographers who do exactly the same thing as you and learn from them. You don't have to like pit yourself against them. There's a gal over on Etsy that I know who, through the Thriving on Etsy and Beyond group, she sells pretty much the same exact thing as me. And we're friends, and we, chat about products and what we're coming out with. And she messaged me the other day. She said, a customer messaged me asking for something. I couldn't fulfill her needs, so I passed her on to you. Like, how awesome is that?
That's awesome.
Like, technically my competition. Can you imagine you go into Burger King and you're like, I want, these fries, and they're like, we're out of fries. You should go next door to McDonald's. They would never do that.
Probably not.
Probably not. But how cool is that? These hand makers, so many of them have this amazing heart that they will literally take one of their customers and give it to their competition. That's how we're lifting each other up, and that's how we're growing.
Well, that's awesome. We spun through a bunch of stuff with you, Paula. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us about all this. It was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. And again, I really appreciate everything you guys do for the community. I mean, I think I have a Marmalead tab open at any given time. I love me a good storm. I love me a keyword storm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The best kind of storm.
I am storming it up at least like 3-4 times a day. So, I mean, you
Nice.
guys, I mean, and so perfect example how I was talking about like serve, sell. This podcast, you guys are serving. Like, you're not selling your product in this podcast.
Just
like,
when Ricky
besides
spells
maybe
it at the beginning, I think
right,
is all. Yeah.
exactly. Besides like a little promo reel right at the beginning. But you guys are doing it perfectly. You are a perfect example of like the entrepreneurial community serving each other. And then when I probably listened to your podcast before I signed up for your product, so you served me through your podcast, and then you sold me. Yeah, I got served. And now I'm sold.
And now you're
Love
on
it.
here serving other people. Look at that.
I'm on here serving.
What?
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this podcast over the ground that you covered here. I think it's fantastic. I hope some people come away with it and put themselves in that moment of walking over the threshold like you're talking about, and ask themselves some difficult questions and try to come up with an honest answer for themselves and take that leap of pushing their shop to the next level, taking things seriously and making some big steps. I think that's awesome.
Thank you. And honestly, you guys, dear audience, dear listeners, how do they say it on Dear Sugar? Dear listeners. If anybody has questions, if you want to reach out to me, please find me. You can find me on Etsy at Clean and Dirty. My Instagram handle is Clean and Dirty. Facebook.com/Clean and Dirty. It's all the same everywhere. Ask me questions. I'm here for you. I'd love to be able to help you. And I'm available.
That's awesome. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll link you through in the show notes, obviously, to your shop and stuff like that. So if people are listening, you can head over to the blog to find links there. Find Paula at all of those places she just listed. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome.
Thank you, guys. I had a wonderful time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we did too. That was fantastic. For everybody else, we'll see you guys next time on Etsy Jam. What is up? You made it to the end of the jam. And because you did, I've got a neat little surprise for you. We're going to start putting little Easter eggs in our jams. So if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned to our jams for more details.